Every single product you own has a secret history, a hidden story. Before it ever reached you, it went on this invisible journey, a journey that leaves a mark on our planet. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain and uncover that story by really digging into a product's carbon footprint.
Just think about it for a second. That coffee you drank this morning or the phone you're probably holding right now. Before it got to you, it had a whole life of its own. The real question is, what kind of life was it? And what sort of impact did it have along the way?
Whether we're talking about a t-shirt or a high-tech tablet, the path is surprisingly similar, right? It's made in a factory, it's shipped across the country or even the world, and then poof, it ends up in your hands. And with every single one of those steps, its environmental impact just keeps growing. So how in the world do we measure that total impact? Well, it all starts with understanding what a product's carbon footprint actually is, which really just means putting a definition to that invisible journey. Okay, so a product's carbon footprint is basically the grand total of all the greenhouse gases it's responsible for from start to finish. To make things simple, all those different gases get converted into a single, easy-to-understand number called a CO2 equivalent, or CO2e. It's the one number you need to know to get the big picture of a product's total climate impact. Now, to get that grand total, you have to look at the entire lifespan, what's known as from cradle to grave. It starts with digging up the raw materials, moves to manufacturing, then distribution. It even includes the energy it uses while you own it, and finally, what happens when you're done with it. Every single one of those stages counts.
And assessments usually come in two main flavors. Cradle to gate gives you a partial picture. It's like reading the first chapter of a book. It measures the impact right up until the product leaves the factory. But cradle to grave, well, that's the full, unabridged story. It tracks emissions all the way to disposal. It is, without a doubt, the most complete picture you can possibly get. Okay, so that's the what, but for any business out there, the real question is always the why. So why does this footprint stuff actually matter? Turns out, there's a really powerful business case for knowing your number. Look, this isn't just about being good to the environment. It's about gaining a serious competitive advantage. Knowing your footprint strengthens your brand with customers who really care. It keeps you ahead of new regulations that are rolling out all over the world. And it meets the growing demand from your B2B partners who need this data for their own supply chains. Honestly, it's fast becoming a non-negotiable for doing smart business. So the business case is clear. Which brings us to the next logical question. How do you actually measure it? Let's look at the practical path to getting an assessment done. You've basically got two main routes here. You can tackle it in-house using spreadsheets and well-established emissions databases to calculate your impact, or if you have more complex products, you can hire a consultant to come in and manage the whole process for you. Either way, it's probably a lot more accessible than you might think. All right, once you have your number, you need to make sure it actually counts for something. And that means navigating the rules of the road to make sure your claims are both credible and compliant. To make your footprint data legit, you've got to follow the global standards. The ISO series is pretty much the gold standard here. 14067 helps you measure the footprint correctly, 14021 guides you on how to talk about it, and 14068, well, that gives you the roadmap to achieving carbon neutrality. Following these rules is what gives your results real authority. And when you go to communicate your results, the rule is simple. Show your work, be truthful, be specific, and back everything up with data that people can actually verify. Avoid those vague marketing buzzwords like eco-friendly, unless you have the hard numbers to prove it. Anything else just risks being seen as greenwashing, which can absolutely destroy the trust you've built with your customers. So, you've measured your impact, and you've worked hard to reduce it where you can. But what about the emissions you just can't eliminate? This brings us to the final crucial step in the journey, moving from just having a footprint to achieving actual neutrality. So that last step often involves something called offsetting, which always leads to the big question on every business owner's mind. Yeah, but what about the cost? Is this going to break the bank? Okay, get ready for this, because here's the number that changes the entire conversation. The typical cost to offset a product's entire carbon footprint is usually less than 0.5% of its retail price. Let that sink in, less than 0.5%. This one single fact completely shatters the myth that becoming carbon neutral is too expensive for most businesses. And here's a really powerful way to think about it. Not compensating for emissions is like leaving your garbage outside to rot. That just reframes the whole thing, doesn't it?
It's not some optional extra, it's a basic responsibility. It's just cleaning up your own mess. So the key takeaway here, and this is really important, is that the solution isn't a choice between reducing your emissions and offsetting them. The real solution is to do both. You decarbonize everywhere you possibly can, and you compensate for the rest. It's a comprehensive two-part approach.
And that brings us right back to where we started. Every single product out there is leaving a footprint. That's a fact. The only question that remains is, what story will yours tell?